YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for April 6th through 12th. This week I read 2 books, I watched 3 shows, and I listened to 2 books. Also, as a slight side tangent, it is my 39th birthday today, so maybe tell me happy birthday in the comments below. The first book that I listened to this week is the Anti-Ableist Manifesto. This is the group read this year for the Disability Readathon, so I picked it up for that event. And this book was laid out in very clear, bite-sized pieces, which I really appreciated. Because this isn't my first book on this subject, there was a bunch of this that I knew previously, but as the saying goes, and I'm going to change it just slightly, if you've read one book about disability, you've read one book about disability. The saying in question, if you're wondering, is if you've met one disabled person, you've met one disabled person. Sometimes when I'm reading books like this, I feel like a lot of it is directed to people who have like jobs where they could actually change things about the businesses they're in, or are in some position of power in some way, and as I'm reading them I'm always like, this is great information, but I can't really do anything with it, until I realized that I am currently on the board of a theater society, and I know that not everybody knows what I know on this subject, so I decided that I would be putting together an accessibility best practices document for my society. Because it's all about the more you know. The other book that I read with my eyeballs this week is Queens of Geek. This was a reread for me because I did in fact read it back in 2017, or at least that's when Goodreads said as I logged it. And I read this all in one day yesterday. The tagline on the book kind of says it all: 3 friends, 2 romances, 1 convention. And this is a dual perspective between 2 of those friends. One of them is Taylor. She is autistic and she is really putting herself out there to go to SuperCon because she's never been to a convention before, but she's been gearing herself up to actually go to this event because this many people, not really her thing. She is going with her best friends Charlie and Jamie, however, and she's been in love with Jamie for years. And Charlie actually just starred in an indie movie that is getting really, really big, and she's a really big vlogger, so she's actually doing a bunch of press-related things at this con. However, her ex-boyfriend is there, who she kind of had a showmance with, and that's not great for her, but she does also meet this really beautiful woman that she's been watching online for years, and it turns out they've been watching each other's vlogs for years, so sparks fly. I really loved this the first time I read it, I really loved it this time, and it was fun to get it done all in one day. As for the shows I watched, the last time I talked about Vera, I was in the 5th season, and now I'm in the 9th season. And this has just been really lovely to put on episodes and do a little bit of cross-stitching and just try to figure out the mystery along the way. I do really love that this one is also shot very, very beautifully, and I'm saying also because again I'm comparing it to Shellen, which did start first, and I have no idea how much of the production cast actually overlaps. There's a chance that there's none of it. However, sometimes there are fun cast overlaps. For example, I'm one of those people that as I'm watching a show I kind of skim through the names that are at the beginning of the episode, so sometimes I'll actually be able to put faces to names of actors, and in one particular episode I was like, oh, the guy that plays Sandy on Shetland is going to be in this episode because I recognize that name. And the weirdest thing for me is I haven't actually watched the end of the thing where it actually puts the name to the person, but I've always just assumed that name was the name of Sandy because of where it was ranked in the Shetland opening, and it turns out I was right. And one of his first lines in this episode that he was in on Vera is, oh, I want to be a police officer, which I only laughed at because of the fact that I know him as a police officer on a different comparable show. This character, however, is very different from the character that he plays on Shetland. In any case, I continue to very much enjoy this. This week we also watched the final 6 episodes of What We Do in the Shadows, and as we were watching this, we were about 11 minutes to the end of the final episode, and the platform that we were watching it on crashed, so we had to wait till the next day to find out how it actually ends, which is only annoying because in this episode is the only time that the people that are in this documentary find out that the documentary is ending and they have feelings about that, and we keep having these kind of false endings to it, and I just wanted to know how it was going to go. There was one particular part in this where the actor that plays Nandor actually just spoke with a different accent, which is something we've seen him do before on the show, but it got us thinking that, like, what is his actual accent? And I ended up looking up a bunch of different interviews just to kind of hear most of the cast not in character, and that was also just a really fun process. Also, if you know about this one particular iconic man from, I believe it was Australia, they call him Mr. Democracy Man. Matt Berry ended up actually getting at least 2 of his quotes into the show in this season. A succulent Chinese meal, and the one that's kind of like, I see you know your judo. Those were both lines in these last few episodes, and we laughed really hard. It was also while watching these interviews that I found out that about half the show is improvised, which is something I didn't know about the show before, so that's fun. As for the other show we watched the end of the 13th season of Jet Lag, and I'm not going to spoil for you how it ended, but I thought it was going to be a little bit longer, and then it wasn't for reasons. There was also an entire season set in Australia. I think it was season 10 if I'm remembering correctly, and we watched that entire season because we just wanted to sit down and watch a season from beginning to end, and we did, and it was really fun. As for the books I listened to, the first one is Sipping Dom Perignon Through a Straw. This one is a memoir by an activist who wrote this all with what he says is his good finger. Eddie was born with a muscular disease that is deterioratory in nature, so he had more function as a younger child, and as he's grown his body is broken down in certain ways. As a young child he was initially kept at home, but as a young child he told his mom, hey, I actually want to go to school like my brother, and she fought tooth and nail to make that happen. And he's been fighting for himself ever since. In fact, a lot of this takes place while he is at Oxford, and all the metaphorical hoops he has to roll through just to get an education at this prestigious location. The audiobook itself is also narrated by the author, which I always just love when that's able to be a thing. And this just talks about Eddie's experiences being a disabled queer black man, different relationships between different people, different carriades that just haven't worked out for reasons. And this was such an interesting time because I found it very easy to see in my mind these scenes that he was laying out for me and the different issues that would arise from them. The other audiobook I listened to this week is The Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School. This is a book about Yami. Her and her little brother Caesar are actually going to a Catholic school this year, which she is pretty excited about, not because she's really excited about the religious aspect of it, although her and her mom and her brother used to go to church quite often, but her mom has been too busy for that to be a regular thing. She's excited because this will probably keep Caesar out of trouble, because even though he is really, really bright, and in fact he's actually skipped a grade, so they're now currently in the same grade, and he also does advanced classes, he was also getting in a lot of fights at their previous school. Not to mention that she recently confessed her feelings for what was her best friend, and her best friend basically outed her to her friend group, and she's not about that life going back to that school, being outed and having her previous best friend hate her. So a fresh start sounds good, and she decides that she's just going to not let anybody know she's queer, and that should be super easy, right? I really enjoyed this one. All of the characters in this were really vibrant, and I could feel the struggles they were going through. I could really feel the emotions they were going through. I could really picture all of these scenes, and I just wanted the best for these characters who shouldn't have to be thinking about things like, if my secret gets out, I'm going to need money, so I have to work really, really hard without telling anybody why, so I have a savings in case I get kicked out of the house. There were definitely a few twists and turns in this that I will let you discover on your own because they were absolutely delightful shenanigans, and I highly recommend this book. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that, as always, is down below. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!